Welcome to Yelling Into the Void, a podcast discussing and exploring topics in World of Warcraft. I'm Tevin. Scott joins me as
Hello.
always. And Scott, it's race time.
Oh yeah.
Kind of race time. I mean, we're probably going to have to watch a week of splits first, but
They'll get to the raid by Friday, right? Maybe.
Mythic, I guess we'll see.
I think Friday or Saturday, maybe.
Well, the nice thing is we don't have Heroic Week this week, so we have the potential to at least see Mythic by Friday, instead of like last season when there was no chance in hell they were going to be in Mythic by Friday. So, but Scott, season 2 is here. Undermine,
It's here.
Shall be liberated by us, and fuck Gallywix.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Wait, what do you do again? Oh yeah, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, he's just an asshole.
He's got a lot of chins.
He does have a lot of chins. But so news-wise, Scott, there's really not a lot going on because this is, like, I said it last week that it was the calm before the storm, but like this actually is, we're recording on Monday. The patch comes out on Tuesday. So tomorrow the patch will be live.
I mean, like, it's weird because when everyone's going to be listening to this episode, they will probably be actively running a Mythic Plus dungeon while listening. That's what I would be doing at least. Or no, what I'll be doing is at work because I get to play FOMO for the entire week as I will be working and really not going to be able to play the game very much at all.
Hey man, that's fine. That's how it goes sometimes. That's how it goes.
No, like here's my plan. Like everyone I play with is going to hit the ground running and be way far ahead of me. But I'm the fucking tortoise, man, and I'm going to catch up slowly over time with my sheer tenacity and will and this lack of anything better to do late at night.
Hey man, it's helped you, or it's worked out for you the last how many seasons now?
That's true.
So
that's true. Just watch out. You'll be 3-4 miles down the road, but I'll be coming.
But like I said earlier, Scott, and I guess to preface this for everybody, every time I say this, it ends up being false, but I don't know how long of an episode today is going to be because really the majority and the meat and the potatoes that we're going to talk about for season 2 is going to come next week and the following weeks, because I'm going to tell you right now, next week, everything is going to be so fresh that I guarantee you, Scott and I are going to gloss over a bunch of stuff, but it isn't going to be until we actually get into the nitty gritty of the dungeons, figure out what is a pain point, and we'll have all that shit to bitch about here in like a month or so. So be on the lookout for that. But as far as today's episode, I don't really know how long it's going to be. So diving into the news, at least, the race for you guys has begun. For us, it will begin tomorrow. And while this might not be super exciting for the first few days, we were just joking about it being splits and splits and splits. They do still have the potential to go into Mythic, like we said. So the fact that there is no Heroic Week this week or this season, and there won't be in season 3, to my knowledge, means that there's at least a potential that we see some Mythic bosses killed here this weekend. We definitely will see Mythic bosses killed by guilds that aren't Liquid and Echo.
Oh yeah.
There's always guilds that try to get the first 3 to 4 bosses killed before Liquid and Echo even start to walk into the raid.
Sure.
But that being said, the 2 main guilds that everybody's looking at, and honestly, should we throw in Method this time because they were a pretty big contender last year?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I definitely want to talk to you about. For sure.
But so, race aside, we'll talk about it a little bit more coming up. Really, I think that there's a lot going on kind of behind the scenes too. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but like there's a patch coming out on the 4th in the last 3 days. Like the tuning changes have came out, and then the last 3 days they've been modifying those tuning changes, like slightly tweaking things or reverting things. So I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not being made aware of because they have internal numbers. Very clearly, they have internal numbers somewhere from something. So I'm hopeful that means we will have a more balanced season, at least at the beginning. There will be outliers afterwards, though.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know me. I'm pretty optimistic about these kind of things. I do think these first couple of weeks of Mythic Plus are going to be a shit show. I think a lot of these things are tuned very aggressively. We're going to see some people, maybe myself included, really struggle with the heal checks. I think, we've been talking for the last few weeks about how this is going to be a very healer intensive season. With lots of trash and bosses having pretty brutal heal checks that I think people are going to bump up against really quickly here, and they're going to have to bring those things down. They're not going to act rashly about that. They're not going to like immediately. I mean, I think there might be one or two things. Like I'm remembering season 3 actually, that there were of Dragonflight, there were one or two things that were just so clearly overtuned that before the end of the first week they brought them down a little bit. But there's some of the stuff they're going to want data. So it's like it's this weird thing where everyone wants to get out there day one and they want to push right away because there's gear to get, there's item level to get, there's progression paths to get. But as far as like successfully pushing keys up, it's going to be probably a little rough, I think, for a couple weeks. I do have faith that they will get things tuned once they get the sheer number of data coming in. But yeah, I mean, you're right, we're seeing very last minute things. I think like 5 minutes before we started recording, they've released another last minute patch hotfix that's gonna go live tomorrow, that's nerfing a bunch of random abilities on some bosses in these dungeons. So yeah, they're really coming right up against the wire here.
Honestly though, it does make me feel good because normally when we go into a patch we don't hear anything, and then things release as a shit show. It's like, did you guys really not know anything was going on here? Like, you really didn't know that these were as bad as they are? And so it's nice to see that they are doing something. Hopefully this isn't too preemptive, because that's the other side of the coin, right? Is they don't actually have the data, but they're going off of what either is hearsay or something like that, or maybe they're just crunching numbers internally and not actually seeing it in a live setting, and it's too preemptive. But I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. They haven't really done this before, so I'd rather be positive than negative about it going into the first time that they're actually going through doing some changes before we actually get the patch. So
yeah, I mean, I guess like I don't know. I know they're very cautious, and you don't ever want to make something harder after the season's been get out. But also, like, what's the consequence of, like, if you release 8 dungeons that are too easy, what is the consequence? It's just, all it is IO inflation. So if everything's too easy, all that's going to happen is all of the numbers are going to shift upwards a little bit. Like people that could only do 10s are now going to be able to do 12s, and like that's like the worst case situation. And like I would rather that than them trying to thread this perfect needle of difficulty that ends in things being overtuned for a long amount of time. So hopefully I am optimistic. I really am. I think this is going to be a good season. I'm pretty jazzed for it. So we'll see. We'll see.
So the other part of the show that I wanted to do I guess once we talk about some of the news, race, whatever, is I kind of want to talk about our goals for season 2.
Yeah.
Because you and I are both role swapping from what we did in season 1.
True. And
we are, I think, going to try to have the same season 1 goals that we had, where we do a bunch of Mythic Plus. That kind of fell short for me in season 1. So I'm hopeful that it'll be better in season 2. But we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know, Scott. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the race? There is one thing that I do want to bring up that you made an extremely good point about that I don't have in our notes here. But I thought about it while we were talking about some of the last minute changes that they made. In that, in the most recent like healing changes, I think both Disc and Mistweaver got nerfed.
Correct.
And maybe we're in a world in which, I know this is always the saying, but we shouldn't be nerfing the best things, but rather buffing the things that are underperforming because of how hard the heal checks are this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing everyone always says. If one class is outperforming the rest of them, why not buff the other ones to be up in line with that? And I understand that creates like a snowball effect where like things just get too out of hand. It is just the case sometimes where if one thing is outperforming something else by such a steep level, the best possible thing you can do is rein in the outlier rather than push everyone up to the outlier's level. I do think with what I understand about the severity of the heal checks in these dungeons of the season, it would probably be just better for the game if you just buff everyone's heal numbers to because Disc was pumping, Mistweaver was doing very well as well, and I think those two classes are still fine. These nerfs ultimately aren't going to be like a huge amount to where either class falls out of. I still think Disc is probably going to end up the meta healer. I think it depends on how the DPS stuff shakes out a little bit, but they're very, very good at every kind of healing these keys need. I think Disc or Mr. Weaver is still going to be really good. I think Resto Druid's still going to be really good, but I think the other healers are in a place where it's not going to hurt anything to bump those numbers up a little bit. Actually, it's going to help. So yeah, it is this weird place where, I mean, no one wants healing to be like the ping pong effect of like just health bar go down, health bar, like no one wants that, but also you have to have your healing profile respond to your damage profile. And so if the damage profile is going to be aggressively killing you and very, very quickly, you need to have that extra oomph. And I think Holy Paladin, I think Resto Shaman could definitely use that oomph.
Yeah. Yeah, and quick question for you. I haven't even seen Holy Priest. How is Holy Priest doing?
They're doing okay. So in Raid with the tier set, they will have really, really, really high uptime on their I forgot what their cooldown is because I don't play Holy Priest. But that one cooldown they press a lot. Will have really
The Shadow Fiend? No, that's Disc.
That's Disc.
The only thing I can think of is like Salvation.
No. See, you were supposed to just know it, and then Apotheosis. That's the one. I think that's the one. Am I just making shit up?
Apoth, they normally play in keys, and they take Salve and Raid.
Yeah, I think they're taking Apoth and Raid. I'm pretty sure. So my understanding is they're just going to have really, really high uptime in a lot of their major buttons, and I think you're going to see a Holy Priest in Raid. I think in the Race to World First, everything I've looked at, all the other healers that know more than me are saying is you're definitely going to have a Disc Priest for sure. You'll probably run 2 Priest healers and then have them swap like fights that are really good for Disc. You'll run double Disc. A fight that's maybe not as good for Disc, you'll maybe one run Holy. I think that's really going to happen. In keys, I don't think Holy's doing too great. I don't think they've got the healing profile to really respond very well. I mean, let's level set here. Like probably up to 12s just fine, right? All these healers up to 12s just fine. But I don't think they're in a great spot. And the same with both of the Holy healers are not doing too great right now.
Yeah, it's very weird because like we live in a time now where there's really only 2 healers that have to like actually cast abilities, like full on cast abilities.
Yeah.
Like we're talking like Resto Shaman and Holy Priest. And like you have Holy Paladin who has a bunch of instant cast stuff. You have Disc who heals through their damage. So I guess they technically have to cast. But then you have Mistweaver who doesn't cast a ton. And you have Resto Druid who does cast a little bit, but they don't cast a ton either.
Yeah.
So like you really only have 2 healers that have to like plant and cast to actually get their healing out. That is just healing and not damage as well. I guess is the caveat that I'm making there for Disc Priest.
Sure. Well, I mean, so you know, Disc Priest, if you recall a few seasons ago, like was just like perennially the not key healer, and it was because they had worked themselves into this pickle with Disc Priest where any buff to make it really good in keys would just make it too ridiculously good in Raid.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't quite figure that out. And the way they eventually solved that problem is they just added like a modifier to Atonement that said, hey, when you're in a 5-man group, atonement is X percentage more effective. And that basically was a knob that they could turn independent of raid that could buff Disc Priest. And since that point, Disc Priest has been fucking incredible in keys and has been meta more often than it has not been. I
Sure.
think that every single healer should just have that. It doesn't have to be exactly like that, but have some sort of dial, some sort of thing that does more in keys than it does in raid, and that you could tune separately. Like I think doing that with the Holy Paladin virtue, beacon of virtue, like would fix a lot of the problems with Holy Paladin. If you just put a modifier on there that says, hey, when you're in a 5-man, beacon heals for a shit ton more than it does in your, and then you can tinker it and tune it correctly.
Hmm.
And it's really inconsistent which healers have that and which healers don't. It's also really inconsistent which healers care about mana and which healers don't. They did nerf Disc Priest's mana a little bit. Basically you got mana whenever your Shadow Fiend attacked, and like because you had such aggressive CDR on Shadow Fiend, you just never ran out of mana. They reduced how much mana Shadow Fiend gives you back on its attacks, and you're just going to be casting it less often now. So I think Disc might actually eventually run into a situation where they have to drink, maybe, or at least need a mana pot, whereas before their mana basically didn't exist. They also nerfed Mistweaver's mana tea regen a little bit, because
Hmm.
like in season 1 you could be at 0 mana and drink your 20 stacks of tea and be full. Like way too strong, ridiculous. They nerfed it a little bit. It's still going to be very good, but I just there's a problem with how the healers all deal with mana differently in a way that's not fair. Like Resto Shaman really suffers when
Yeah.
Resto Shaman needs to pump. They just churn through their mana, and the fact that other healers don't have that same problem just doesn't seem fair to me.
So you're telling me people are gonna have to sit down and drink in my keys now?
Um, I mean, I'm not, because I'm playing a Mistweaver, so I'll just drink my tea. But there could be times. I mean, if you're playing with a shaman, yes, absolutely. But I mean, we'll see. I generally agree that stopping to drink in keys for healers. Like I'm not saying I want them to nerf mana regen to where they have to do that again. What I want them is to make parity across the classes. That's what I want.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, anybody in my dungeon, you better just get used to like drinking ahead of me or something. Play a night elf. I don't know.
I
Figure
mean,
it out because I'm not stopping.
every
So
healer knows the how long can I get away with drinking before someone dies calculation. Everyone knows it's part of playing the game.
Scott, do you want to talk about race for a little bit? I
Yes,
don't like, so there's not a ton to go over with the race. I do think that it's going to be interesting to see one, how many splits we have.
a
Because
million.
in theory, it looks like we might not even be seeing a lot of people switching off the circlet. So like that's one less piece of gear that almost the entire raid needs to get, which is, it sounds so insignificant, but that's a significant time save potentially.
So in
Um,
in season 1, I think everyone ran 15 characters.
mhm.
But that was with a heroic week, right? So
Yep.
in theory, they would not run as many characters. Um, However, we're going to see a lot of splits. I mean, let's be honest here. Like you and you and I have talked about this before. We love the Race to World First. It's a fun event. We love watching it. It's really great. I hate the splits part of it, and I
Yep.
wish they could develop a way to get this out of the game. I know all the raiders hate the splits part of it too, but they don't have a choice. We live in a world where it's just going to happen until there's a system in the game that literally prevents it from happening. But I think it sucks. I think it sucks to turn on the race on patch day and just be like, oh, none of this matters. None of this
Mhm.
matters actually. It just feels weird, and I wish they would get rid of it. But yeah, there's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of splits. They've all got their plan together already. There's a lot of math that goes into this thing and decides. There's people on both teams that entire job is calculating and deciding how many splits they need to run, the order of the splits, how everything's going to be decided, and all that. Like that's a full-time race job that's going to be happening there. And it sucks. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's also insane.
Yeah.
So, okay, so last race and a few races before that, there has been a few exploits that have been happening.
Mm-hmm.
So last race, there were a few actually. It was more than one. To the point of, I think almost the entirety of Method got banned right up until the day that most people were really finishing their splits. I don't
Yeah.
know. They had to like rush to get their splits done.
Yeah.
So
Ultimately, they
hopefully,
weren't behind in any like tangible sense. They were behind in the fact that they got less sleep on Heroic Week than the other groups did.
yeah, exactly. So that being said, though, Blizzard made like a pretty significant statement with those bans before the raid last year. And there were even some bans and some issues that happened during the race. I don't think that any bans really happened for any of the major guilds, but there were like rep exploits. There were exploits for debuffs, or I think there was a fire mage, Sunfire, Sun Fury, whatever, or
Yeah,
Spellslinger.
I still hesitate to call that an exploit because that was just a known bug that was in the game from beta that Blizzard refused to do anything about. But yes, it existed.
True, true. But all of that to say, and I have it in the notes that I haven't seen any degen farming stuff yet. But right before we started this, it sounds like there might be. Nothing's been confirmed, so I don't really want to go into that too super much. But this could all just be wrong. But I think that for the most part, people learned their lesson last year. And I'm hopeful that that's the case because it's really annoying no matter who's doing the exploiting that the other person's always just like, well, it doesn't really matter if you win because you exploited to win. And then, like, even if that was on a boss that was so insignificant and the amount of time that they spent on the final boss, like, completely wiped away any advantage they would have had,
Yeah.
that's all people point the finger to. I'm hopeful we don't see that again because both Liquid and Echo have done it in the past. Method's done it in the past. So I'd like to see it just be completely fair and clean.
Yeah. So Liquid exploited and got a slap on the wrist in Emirdrasil. Echo did and Method did in Nerebar Palace and got a bigger slap on the wrist. The trend is clear here, and Blizzard is sending a clear message to these guys, probably via the bans, but also literally just sending the messages that said, if you do this, we will ban you during the race. So I was pretty convinced, and I've listened to both people from Echo and Max from Liquid talk about this, that they've gotten the message and it's just not going to be worth it to do this anymore. So I legitimately believed that, if you look at like the rep that we have this week, there's nothing in there that's like worth. First of all, I don't think there's any kind of hardcore grind system that you could even exploit in order to get your renowned up higher. But there's also nothing in there that seems really worth it. I mean, there is still at the end of the track, you still get the enchanted crest at the end of that track, but that was more valuable in Nerebar Palace when the gilded version of that crest was 90 crests.
Yep.
Because they've nerfed that down to 60, my understanding is that's just not as valuable anymore, so it's not worth the grind, even though there's not any grind. Now, this is all to be said, as you mentioned, right before we started recording, I saw a tweet that showed a couple armory pictures, one from a raider in Echo, one from a raider in Liquid. I will not name any names because this has been unconfirmed and I do not want to throw anyone under the bus, but it seems that both of them have at least 2 levels of renowned with the raid only renowned track that was new added to this expansion, or this patch rather. So that's the track that it's designed to where you're supposed to get 1 level per week if you kill at least half of the bosses. It's their new thing. And the reason that's significant because that's starting at renowned level 3 is when the raid wide buff starts kicking in. That's once you get renowned level 3, you're getting an extra 3% damage and healing. So there is no way to get this renowned right now. Again, the supposed way is by killing bosses. So if you kill bosses, you get the renowned. Now, I don't know what's going on here. Is this an armory bug? Could very well be. Is this some sort of brilliant exploit that people have found? I would be very surprised. Like, literally everything I've heard everyone say is, we've gotten the message. We're not going to cheat. We know we will be punished if we cheat. It would surprise me greatly if then they turned around and said, "Oh, but we found this cool new way to cheat." Like, it's just, the thing about it is it's so easily detectable. Like, it's just like, if your renowned is anything but 0 right now, you've cheated, because it's
Yep.
impossible to get renown. So I like, it's very possible we're seeing like the armory from the characters' PTR characters or something, where they have killed bosses because they were doing it for I don't know. We just saw this right before we were starting recording, so it hasn't even been like picked up like more broadly. By the time this episode comes around, this could have been completely squashed, and I have no idea. But I think there is a lot of pressure in this game to push the limit and get away with what you can get away with, because if you don't get punished for it and it gives you an advantage, it was the right move.
Yeah, I mean, what was the saying that they were using? Exploit early, exploit often, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Blizzard really did not like that, and I think that's why they came out with the bans last time.
Yeah, but I mean, they need to be consistent. This is the problem: is they are just notoriously inconsistent with how they hand out punishment for this type of stuff. I mean, we were talking about it a couple weeks ago, right? At the end of the season, there were all these people that were exploiting buffs that you could get in different areas that you were, and bring them into Mythic Plus, buffs that you were not supposed to have, buffs that made the keys easier. There was rampant abuse of that through the end of the season. And while they have said, I think in an interview, Morgan Day said, this is a bug and we will have a fix for it by the time season 2 comes out. Well, it's the 3rd of March. I have not seen any kind of actual notes about a fix for this. But also, I haven't seen any notes about whether they deleted the keys that use these things, if they took that score away from those people. I haven't seen anything. So maybe not. So those people are perhaps getting a lesson that we should continue to do this. And yeah, this is a problem. You need to enforce the rules consistently, or not enforce them at all. Like, that's the choice.
I completely agree, and I would be interested to see, like, when we actually see the like statistics of title holders, what some of the high end players say about that. Because it was a high end player who brought our attention. It was Ellesmere's tweet who brought our attention to this specifically, and so I'd be interested to see, if he has a follow up around that.
I mean, especially in a system where you are competing against other people to get the highest score, right? Like, it's one thing if you're just all existing at the same time. Like, I don't really give a shit. Like, it doesn't affect me at all because I'm not competing for title or anything. So I don't really give a shit what buffs people are bringing into stuff. I don't care. Whatever. Do whatever you want. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to risk it, but do whatever you want. But if I'm one of those people trying to compete for like number 1 on a spec or a class or a role, or trying to compete for title, and I have to compete with people that are cheating, it's like, then the pressure turns to me as like, well, I better cheat too or lose. And that's not fair.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do hope that we are in a much better situation than we were last year, at least going into it, and way better situation than we ever have been before when it comes to Blizzard actually having shown that they will do something about it. So, like you said, be consistent, continue to do what they need to do to hand out punishments that are adequate to what they're doing. Last time, I think that they very well knew that they were banning people who were participating in the Race to World First, and so they didn't want to punish them too super heavily. But that being said, if they continue to do things, then they should see an increased punishment, just like the rest of the player base would. And we'll see what ends up happening there.
I mean, it's really tough because the race is an incredibly popular thing that is very good for Blizzard, and so they are incentivized to not fuck with it too much. I mean, they're incentivized to promote it, and they're not, like, let's say Echo cheats, right? Like, just everyone in Echo they've found a way to exploit this renown track thing to where they can get 3 renowned before the raid even opens. Now, if you're Blizzard, you're like, fuck. We have to put our money where our mouth is. Do we ban them all? If we ban them all, then the race is over. Then it's done.
what I was gonna say, Scott, is you know this very well. You know that it's part of being a parent. You can't make empty promises.
I know I have. I've been caught in this. I've been caught in the no TV for the rest of the day thing, and then I'm like, shit. I need the TV actually. But yeah, I mean, like it's a hard situation to be in. But I like it, you could definitely see a situation where an Echo or a Liquid like calls their bluff and is just like, we think the existence of the race is more important to you than upholding these rules, and
Yep.
we're gonna see if that's the way you actually feel. I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, Scott, let's talk about the raid in
Well,
general.
hang on. Before
Oh,
we leave
oh,
the
oh, oh.
race, who's gonna
Go for it.
win? Who's gonna
Who's
win?
gonna
What's your
win? Well,
prediction? What's your
Liquid. Liquid's
prediction?
gonna win.
Liquid's gonna
I'm
win.
always
Okay.
gonna say Liquid though.
All right. Yeah. I mean, do you think that because you're a fan of Liquid, or do you think they're actually going to win?
I have North American blood in my veins, so I want the North American team to win.
All right. All right.
That's pretty much it. That
From
being said, though, I do like. I love this like banter, and going completely off topic here. The best part about the race is that two of the best guilds, one of them is North American and one of them is European,
Mhm.
because we get almost 24-hour coverage of the race
Sure.
because of that. And that is so awesome just to have that. Because I remember when we had there were some Chinese guilds who were also participating, and like that was like truly 24-hour coverage, because then you'd have like you had the North American guilds, you had a European guild, and then you had Chinese guilds to watch no matter what time you were awake.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. But yeah, if you ask me, pretty much until something drastic happens with Liquid, I will probably be picking Liquid to
Yeah. I
hopefully win
mean,
the
we
race.
gotta cheer for America, from the Gulf of America to the 51st state. We are all patriots.
But so, question for you though, Scott:
Hmm.
if Method does come out swinging, that would be extremely interesting,
I think
because I was just going to say there's history obviously with Echo and Method, but there's also already history with those three guilds anyways, because Echo used to be Method used to be the guild that was going up against Liquid, and so like there's going to be like a pretty big three-way rivalry, I think.
I think this is the story of the race, is where Method finishes, because I think people are overestimating how weak Echo is. I think there's this conversation right now that like, oh, Liquid's definitely going to dominate, and it's going to be a race for second between Echo and Method. I think that's doing Echo, like, first of all, nothing would make me happier than that. Let's be clear. But I think that's doing Echo a disservice. I know they've lost some people, some very good people, and Method has aggressively recruited some very, very good people. I know that's true. That is true. Echo's still Echo, though. They have the resources, they have the infrastructure, and they have the experience, and that goes a long way. It does. So I think anyone's thinking that this is going to be a super easy race for Liquid, and Method's going to be competing for second place is probably overreacting to the news we've seen here. However, I think Method does have a very strong case for making it interesting in second place. Whoever ends up in first place, I think Method is going to be making a strong push for second. And I think that's really exciting. Nothing could be better than the race, than a new competitor come in. And I mean, we saw in Nerebar Palace, like they ended up getting third, but they lessened the gap. The gap between second and third place was smaller than it has been in a long time. And so what's going to happen? I don't know. It depends on how long the race lasts, how hard the raid is, and how well each of the teams play. I mean, like, ultimately the reason Liquid won last tier is because they just played their fucking asses off. They really did. They all played incredibly. They had great strategies. They executed on those strategies very well, and they just outplayed Echo. They just did. Is that going to happen again? I don't know. We'll see. I know like Echo hates to lose, and they usually, when they do, come back and just play holy shit amazing. But yeah, will the losses that they've sustained, I don't know. I think what we're going to see conclusively is whether healers matter, because Echo has lost some of their best healers, and
Yeah.
and maybe that's not doesn't matter because playing a healer is easy, but maybe it does. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Echo has lost some pretty key roles. They've lost a few healers. They've lost tank. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. They lost one tank who was replaced by Now in season one, and now is no longer associated with Echo. So I don't know if their tank is coming back. I don't know if they have a replacement. So we'll see how all of that goes. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they're starting off a step behind, I think, the rest of the teams, because they did have some pretty drastic roster changes. But I
Yeah,
don't think it's a significant enough step that we should really be counting them out,
yeah,
like you were saying.
yeah. I mean, the roster stuff is like, this is part of the reason why Liquid and Echo can and just have continued to dominate is not only because they have the money and resources, but also they just steal the best players from everyone else. Like
Yeah.
if someone ever rises up to the level of being like the best player on their guild, Liquid and Echo can walk up to them and be like, "Hey, you want to be on our guild?" And they're like, "Yeah, of course I do." So I think this could end up swinging things. Like there's I think something had to happen to upset the status quo of the kind of Liquid Echo matchup where every tier it's been just them clearly at the top. Something dramatic had to happen to kind of upset that, and we've seen it. Now whether that pays off or not, that's part of the fun of watching the race. But it's Method, I think, has their best shot right now, and I think
Yeah.
they know that.
I definitely agree. I'm really looking forward to seeing how all of this shakes out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a potential third broadcast. It's going to be fun all around. And one thing that I wanted to talk about earlier that I kind of forgot about is, like, even if you're not somebody who enjoys the race, even if you're not somebody who's super hype about Mythic Plus, all of this does bring more hype to the game that we all love to play,
Yep.
and it's a fun time to be a World of Warcraft player whenever a new season drops, because people are so ungodly happy to just jump back in and see how things are going.
Yeah, to remind everyone, the race is what brought me back to the game. So like
Mhm.
this happens. It will continue to happen, and it's great fun.
But all right, Scott, we need to talk about the raid a little bit. We talked about the raid kind of like a preview a couple weeks ago, but really, like, I don't want to get too super in depth. All I want to say is, echoing my sentiment from last week, this raid looks amazing, not only just from like mechanics, but also just the theme. Again, they did the whole leaning 110% into the whole Goblin theme for the raid as well, and I'm here for it. I'm looking forward to everything about the raid. I'm looking forward to all of the wacky things that happen, because you know just as well as I do that since this raid is this wacky, the broadcasts from both Liquid and Echo are
Oh
probably going to
yeah,
have some crazy ass shit in them too.
yeah,
So I'm looking forward to all of that.
yeah. I mean, there's a part of me that wonders, like, so I was listening to Max talk about this because I'm watching his stream a lot in preparation for the race. I always like doing that. And he was talking about how, like, what matters more for how a raid is remembered fondly. Is it boss mechanical design, or is it theme and vibe? And his conclusion was essentially it's the latter. That for the majority of the player base, whether you're a raiding mythic or not, the thing that matters most towards your perception of the raid is the theme, is the vibe, is the atmosphere. And I kind of think I just agree with that because, like, I mean, when you get right down to it, like, these bosses are fun. I don't get me wrong. I've loved everything I've seen from the design, and I like fighting bosses in general. But like when you get right down to it, like the mechanics themselves, like once you understand them and do them, they're not the things you're thinking about when you think about a raid.
Right.
Really, you're thinking about what the guy looked like, or what the mechanic did that looked cool, or like silly, or badass, or like this is the stuff you're thinking about. So I think even if the raid from a boss to boss mechanical level is just average. I think the fact that we're in this Goblin City, we're raiding a freaking casino, and not just the casino, we're gonna be driving through town too, right? Like the raid is the zone. I think all of this combined is gonna make for one of the more memorable raids, at least of the part of the game that I've been playing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, like on paper, thinking back, the only thing that like hearing the concept of it brought me like, wait, we're doing what? Was Siege of Orgrimmar. Because like that was like you are actually going into a capital city and you are fixing shit that is going wrong. And uh, there are so many raids in this game that have been memorable, and there's bosses that are super memorable. But like there hasn't been a concept since Siege of Orgrimmar where I've been like, that is just badass.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely badass. So I'm very much so looking forward to it. I know you are as well. There's a bunch of people in our guild who are extremely excited for this. And I think that that pairs perfectly with the fact that the race in the season starting, because it's bringing like an exorbitant amount of hype for the game and want to play the game and try things out. And really like this is Blizzard's shot. If they nail this, they will keep so many players from this season going into season 3, and we'll see a pretty sharp growth in player base, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with this. I mean, I think like the things that we think about when we remember the World of Warcraft raids are like, Ice Crown Citadel. These are big lore moments. These are big badass character moments. And the thing about this raid that's so funny is we don't have any of like the big lore or character things. Like, okay, we get to fight Gallywix. Like who? No one. No one's excited about this raid because of Gallywix. Like that's not it. It's just the design and the coolness of it, the funniness of it. Like
Yeah.
I this is honestly what I want the game to get back to, is because I agree with you. Like I was not playing during Siege of Orgrimmar, but I was, for whatever reason at that time in my life, obsessively watching people do the raid. I think this was probably, it was definitely before like Race to World First um was not streamed, I don't think. But I was watching, I think it was Trekkie. You remember Trekkie?
Hmm.
He was playing a paladin for, was it Method? I don't even fucking know anymore.
It might have been at that
But I
point.
was watching him do Siege of Orgrimmar, and I just remember this thing is so badass. It's so cool that you start like it doesn't it start in Pandaria too, and then you
Yeah.
like the first fight is in Pandaria, and then you move like it's so cool. It feel like this is what a raid is supposed to feel like. It's not just this big area that you would just plop into and okay, go from room to room. Yeah, it's like we're doing something. We're doing
Yeah.
something. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it is awesome, and we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how memorable it becomes, and hopefully everything, like I said, it ties in well, and we'll be good to go. But there are a few other things from the raid, or I guess the patch that are coming. And as stupid as this sounds, I think one of the things that I'm most looking forward to in this patch is the new swirly design, and that's because they have already like. I don't know if you guys have done Stone Vault since the changes. It's a little annoying in there because like the indicator like you can pretty much ignore it. Like the thing it's indicating doesn't mean shit. But the fact that they are already putting these new swirlies in old content means that we are going to see them pretty much be the primary way that they display information going forwards. And I'm excited for that because they are very, very well defined. You can tell where things start and stop. And again, I've said this countless numbers of times. It looks so much better, and it's
Yeah.
better to play with too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's one of the best things of the patch for sure. They're great, and I'm so happy for it. We've lost all excuses now. A question though: have we seen these swirlies interact with the dreaded carpets?
We have not, and I have a feeling that they probably are going to have the same issue that the previous ones did because I bet that that's a game engine thing. and not a swirly texture
It
specific thing.
it has to be, because if it was just a swirly texture thing, surely they would have fixed it. Um, it just seems like this is a thing that they're just incapable of fixing. Like how the swirlies interact with carpets and with water, and it's not good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think these look great. It's funny because like the resistance to this from the developers for so long was for aesthetic purposes. And you just look at them in the raid, and it's like, I don't care. The fights still look great. I don't care.
Yeah.
Oh no! Instead of being this random undefined swirl of color, now it's a circle of color. Oh no! My immersion.
Well, Scott, the last thing I'm really looking forward to about the raids, as stupid as this sounds, but I'm raid leading this tier. So
Uh
I'm
huh.
excited to see
You've been
actual
studying.
boss guides that have like footage of people doing the actual bosses and not like PTR bosses that could be heavily changed from what they are now, or reading through a dungeon journal trying to guess how you're going to resolve mechanics.
I mean, this is also one cool thing about watching the Race to World First is you're gonna get to see them fight. You know, splits suck, but while you're watching 47 hours of splits, you're gonna get to see every single fight over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
So, you know,
But I'm excited for this because the thing is like there's a special part of me that really wants to like go in blind and just like learn these things. But I know myself and I like to be prepared. And I also know myself and I'm going to watch the race. So, like, the fact that I consume the race content means I will never go into these raids blind because we don't raid on patch day.
yeah.
So, that's just something that I've kind of come to terms with. And so, I like to have the best information that I can going forwards. And I will get it starting this week because people can actually do the damn bosses. So, very much so looking
Heck
forward
yeah.
to that.
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. I don't know if there's anything else that I really want to talk about for the raid. Like, Galliwick's model to me is extremely standout, and I'm hopeful that there's like, if there's ever a raid to do a wacky, crazy, hidden mythic phase, like this is the raid to do it.
I think
So
it's
I'm
happening.
hopeful. Yeah, I'm hopeful something will happen.
But place your bets. Liquid winning, hidden mythic phase. I think both of those things are happening.
You think both?
Yep.
Just one hidden mythic phase? You think
Yeah.
there's going to be a mythic only boss?
No, I don't think they'll ever do that again.
I was about to say Cho'Gall was the last time I think that they did that, and I
Yeah.
don't know that it'll ever happen again.
It's too much development time for a thing
Yeah.
that only
A
what
small amount of
1,000
people.
people are gonna.
Yeah, yeah, and it probably just throws out an entire wrench into like actual integrity of the race too. It's like you think you're finished, you think you've won, and then you
Well,
didn't.
yeah, I mean, I don't even know how the present day gearing system would even function with an entire extra boss.
Yeah, true, true. But all of that to be said, I don't think that there's anything else for the raid because we haven't seen it yet. So we'll have more to talk about once we actually go through the raid. I think our plans for the raid are probably do normal first weekend and get into heroic for what we can. But we definitely won't be getting AOTC first weekend.
No, and I think, you know, we talked a big game in the first season and we had
Mhm.
big plans, and none of that came to fruition for various reasons. We struggled a lot with recruiting and with retaining players once we got AOTC. We're currently running a kind of a skeleton crew of Raiders right now, where we're barely fielding a full team. Um, but I mean, I'm not stressing about it. You know,
Yeah.
I just want to go in there and kill the bosses and eventually get AOTC, and then we'll see from there. I'm trying to be much more like chill and casual. This tier, not with like my playing of the game. I'm still gonna play it a shit ton, but just like with whether or not things are gonna bother me or I'm gonna get bent out of shape about how things are going.
Right.
I'm just when it comes to the raid, I'm really I just want to see the bosses and have some fun.
Mhm. Well, that brings us kind of into season 2 then, I think,
Yeah.
because we're talking a little bit about season 2 plans. But before we get into our actual plans, Scott, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the circlet. And we've kind of talked this into the ground a little bit. But the most recent Wowhead, like infographic that came out about the circlet is kind of showing when this is going to be replaced for your class. And there's like a concerning amount of classes that look like this is just going to be their best ring for the entire tier.
That means they're going to nerf it. I mean, like that's just what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I it's annoying because I mean, like we talked about this when they announced it. There was like, our goal for this is that you retain this into roughly heroic rating, and then a heroic or mythic track item replaces this and becomes better. And we were like, that's a lofty goal if you can hit the mark, and it's very clear that they have not.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think this stands. I mean, it's weird because, as you mentioned, like this does affect the race. And it's like, if they haven't announced it tonight, right now, it's 11 p.m. the night before the raid comes out. Like, it would surprise me. I mean, I guess who knows? They might do something last minute tomorrow, but it would surprise me if this happens tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, can it happen before the race is over?
I would argue it probably won't. Blizzard will never say that they're holding off something because of the race, but I would argue it probably won't happen until the race is over. The other part of this, though, that I did want to say, Scott, is they kind of hit both of the edge case scenarios that you and I were talking about with this ring. Because on initial release, it was like dog shit. Nobody wanted to use it. And now we're talking about it potentially being the best ring, even over pieces of gear that are like 20 to 30 item levels higher than it here in the next season. So they really hit both extremes with the circlet.
Yeah, I need to stop with this shit. I mean, I think like we just to quickly rehash our conversation from a couple weeks ago, this kind of borrowed power light shit they keep doing, they just need to knock it off. It's not working. It's not, like, again, either shit or get off the pot. Like, either commit to the concept of borrowed power or just don't do stuff like this, because it's just weird and it doesn't work. It doesn't feel fun. And then you have these weird situations where like everyone's holding on to the ring, seeing it's going to be best in slot. We all know it's going to get nerfed anyway. So it's like, okay, like it's just dumb. I don't like any bit of it.
Well, so we're talking about nerfs and buffs and everything like that, and like really, there's not much else to say about the ring. So like, I'm gonna kind of leave that one on the side. I just wanted to bring it up because that infographic came out, and there were some rumblings among the people in our guild who are like, "Are we really gonna have to wear this ring until the end of the season?" And like, well, at least currently that's what it's looking like. But all of that aside, though, I do want to talk about maintenance, because the maintenance tomorrow I think is going to be pretty important. So obviously there's always the argument for the race of like North America gets an entire day ahead of EU, but they don't actually, because maintenance takes longer and they're seeing bosses for the first time and yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter what side of that argument you're on. The fact of the matter is that tomorrow is going to be a crucial time for them to get an update on time. And they did well with the update last week. So I'm hopeful they'll do well with the update this week. But I guess we'll see.
Yes. However, if tomorrow's maintenance becomes not only updating everything to flip on all the season 2 stuff, but also becomes a maintenance about addressing the fairly severe lag issues that have plagued the server since the patch came out. If suddenly this maintenance window has to do double duty, then that's when you start getting like, did they have enough time to do all of this stuff? I hope so. Like, as you said, the servers came up early. They set I think it was 3 p.m. Pacific time. Maybe it was even 5 p.m. Pacific last week, and they came up an hour or two. No, it wasn't that late. I think it was 3 p.m. They came up an hour early from that, which is great. This one is currently set to end at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so that'll be 1 my time, 2 your time. I hope so. It's weird because I mean again, it's this weird thing. I have a vague memory of us talking about this when we talked about the race last patch, but it's like this idea of you're like, you tell everyone that's playing in the Super Bowl that we think the game's going to start at 1, but we don't know. It could start at noon, but also it could start at 2. So just, be ready, and
Hmm.
we'll tell you about 5 minutes before it's going to start. It's just like it's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know. Blizzard has been getting a bad rap, and honestly, they're not in my good graces when it comes to maintenance lately. Um, and we've said it before, but like, I want them to overshoot the amount of time that it's going to take, and then come in under it instead of
Yeah.
doing the extend 3 times, and then eventually the servers come out. But the problem with that is, like you were saying, like with the race, like perfect example of that. If they tell them it's going to be, let's just say 5 hours of maintenance, but then it only takes 3, they planned for 5 hours of maintenance.
Yeah.
So that is also an issue. And again, we've talked about the race so much when it comes to this patch and the things that are happening. And Blizzard will never admit the fact that all of the things that they do around the beginning of the season do have the race in mind.
Oh,
And I think that that's a it's very obvious. So I don't think that they need to be so vehemently against it anymore. But it's a reality that we live in, and the race brings so much attention and people to the game that I don't necessarily think that it needs to be seen in this terrible light. There are some things that they need to make sure that they do better, and there are some things like we've talked about it in the past where like the people who are fighting Gallywix in the Race to World First will be fighting a completely different boss from the people who fight it here in a couple months.
mm-hmm.
That's a problem. That's something I think that they should address. But the things with like not nerfing some things for raid until the race is over, not addressing some things like that, like a lot of these things are things that not actually affecting anybody. And
Sure.
so it's more of like a we're complaining to complain about it kind of thing instead of I feel like it actually having a lot of value. But there are some things that do have a lot of water. Like I said, the fact that the fights are insanely different is one. But just went on a long tangent to say I think that they need to make sure they continue to nail their maintenance schedule because they've had quality issues and maintenance like deadline issues for quite a while now.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I are both in IT. We know like shit happens, right? Like that it does. You have implementation day problems, unforeseen bugs or errors that come up that mess everything up. But you are supposed to build that into your timeline. And
Mhm.
i- if it's happening so consistently that people can set a clock by you and say, "Oh, is this going to be the first extend or the second extend or the third? How many extends are we going to get this time around?" Then there's a problem in your process that I think is deeper than just you know time to patch stuff. Like I agree. I mean, I think it is always better to overshoot, but yeah, I completely understand when you have things like the race that they're wanting to try to get as close to the actual time as possible. But
So for season 2, Scott, we need to talk about what our plans are and kind of how we're feeling.
yeah.
So, do you want to talk about dungeons a little bit? Is there anything that's standing out to you as like something you're extremely excited for? Is there any dungeon that's standing out to you as like this is going to be my problem dungeon and I'm concerned about this?
I am concerned about different fights in every single dungeon. Let's be clear. I have not done any PTR testing. I did not get on the PTR at all. I just watched and have been looking at guides and stuff, doing all the usual season prep stuff. You don't want to walk into the dungeon completely unprepared, but still, like the best way to learn is by seeing it. So I'm not like I don't have every single ability memorized for every single boss, but I know the general strategies and enough to get by as we push up the early keys.
Right.
Um, I think Priory is a dungeon I'm nervous about. It seems like that one is going to really hurt a lot. Um, I think Dark Flame Cleft is going to be really interesting. It is going to be really interesting to see how the minecart goes with the changes they've made to it. So it seems like the current strategy with the minecart is right now is to just pull massively big pull as many mobs onto the minecart as possible, because when there is a mob in combat within range of it, it slows down to an absolute crawl. It barely moves. But when there's no mobs, it moves pretty fast. So the idea is you basically divide it into two big chunks where you bring everything you can possibly bring onto the light. I think everything gets a damage amp on it when it's in the light too. So you'll do more damage to stuff. So to burn it all down, we'll see how that actually works in. I'm really interested to see how that works in pugs. Because I just think that's going to be one area where pugs are going to be incredibly frustrated, especially since it's not going to be clear like who's responsible for getting the wax to recharge the candle. And like I think both that and the fight with the final fight with the darkness is going to be rough for that, because it seems like it's going to be healer job to pick up the candle and move it out of the way of the frontal, which I'm fine with that. But whose job it is it to get new wax and bring it back to the candle? I think that's going to need to be just about everybody's job, except for maybe the tank. And it's going to be interesting to see how that actually goes. I mean, other than those, like I'm excited to experience the dungeons, even the ones I've seen already. Like Theater Pain is probably the one I'm least excited in doing, just because that's very fresh on the mind. I think like Workshop is also pretty fresh on the mind, but I feel like they made some changes to a lot of that stuff that makes me go, maybe I won't mind doing this again because it's going to be so different. I mean, we'll see. Maybe 2 weeks into it, I'll be like, I'm fucking sick of this place. I don't want to do it anymore. But I mean, other than that, like I think the dungeons seem visually appealing. I like the aesthetic. I like the design. I'm really into the new dungeon, Operation whatever. Floodgate. Thank you. I knew it was water something, and I couldn't think of what. So yeah. I mean, I'm nervous as a healer, as I'm sure every healer out there is probably based on what they've heard about this season. But I have relative confidence in my healing ability, and also I think weirdly enough, we got to see like a preview of what the new scaling is going to be like this week. Which, folks listening out there, I don't know. It's too late now, but if y'all did any keys in this past week, this dead week between the patch and the season, it's wild. It's wild. The scaling is in, and these keys are a lot easier than they were. Like an 11, we 3-chested our 11s, and they felt like 8s to me. Like they felt very easy. We 3-chested them, and it's not like we were playing flawlessly, right? I was playing a DPS because we had another healer in the group. So I'm playing Windwalker. I do not have a lot of experience in that spec, so I'm not helping with kicks as much as I need to because I'm staring at my freaking weak aura to try to get my rotation down. And we're 3-chesting them. So yeah, like if this is the scale, now granted we have like max gear, yada yada yada, but like if this is the scale we're talking about, like I'm feeling pretty good.
All right, Scott, I don't want to do this to you, but I do need a best and a worst so that we can reference back to this here in like a couple months and see how absolutely wrong we were.
Okay. Like from a difficulty perspective, or just like overall enjoyment?
Your feelings. What are you most positively looking for, and what are you least positively looking forward to?
I think least positive is Priory. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm most positive about so if I was going for what I think is going to be the easiest, I would say the Rookery. I think the Rookery is going to be the easiest. But what I'm most positive about myself actually is Operation Floodgate. Just because I think I think it's a really cool design. It's out of all the dungeons in the season, one of the ones that seems like to have the most open layout to where routing actually might come into play, which I always enjoy. And the bosses seem cool. So whether or not it's going to be easy or not is another thing. But yeah, I'm going to say so. Operation Floodgate, positive. Priory of the Sacred Flame, most negative.
Okay. So we're going to be very similar. And so I don't want to rehash everything that you just said, but I pretty much agree with everything that you said for why you were looking forward to and not looking forward to a lot of these dungeons. The one thing that I do want to say, and it's funny because I'm not going to have to deal with it this season, but the thing that I hate the most about Theater of Pain isn't the dungeon itself at all, but it's the boss at which you have to like do the fucking PvP and like you have to in your group decide who's going to win just so that you can get back up and then that person gets the damage buff and all of that shit. I hate that. I hated that at content. I never want to do it again. And so like my least favorite dungeon going into this season is by far going to be Theater of Pain for that reason specifically. I have seen the healing checks in Priory. I also remember doing that when it first came out, and the like consecrations and all of the shit that they put on the ground after the first boss is just insane. I know they seemed like they said they toned it back a little bit, but it's probably still fucking crazy. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But the one I'm most looking forward to, again, like you said, is Operation Floodgate. I actually know nothing about the dungeon yet, and so I'm completely blind. But if it's anything like the rest of this patch, it's going to be amazing. So I'm just
Yeah.
looking forward to it based on the rest of the patch alone.
Those are good answers. I mean, Theater of Pain, like it doesn't fit. Like not only is like you don't enjoy that particular mechanic, but like it doesn't it has nothing to do with any. It's like they say they pick the legacy dungeons for like thematic or aesthetic purposes, right? That's why they picked Motherlode. That's why they picked Workshop again. And then Theater of Pain just kind of sticks out as the odd man out. And yeah, like we said the other week, like maybe it's the Cauldron of Carnage Coliseum vibe they're going off of there, but that's one very small part of the raid, and still doesn't have an aesthetic that matches at all. So yeah, it feels very odd. So I'm not. I never disliked that one as much as you, but that was also during Shadowlands when, let's be honest, there was one boss and one dungeon that had a heal check, and that was about it.
Yeah, well, you also got to look at it this way, though. Theater of Pain's green, Scott, and goblins, they're also green.
Oh, you're right. It's because of the green.
Yeah,
no, you're right.
That's
Shit.
100% it.
That's
I can't believe
yeah.
we didn't get all the Maldraxxus dungeons.
When is Plaguefall coming back? It's for sure happening. Maybe next season.
I never want to do the second boss and the last boss. I don't ever want to do those bosses again. Fuck those bosses.
What Shadowlands dungeon are you looking forward to coming back?
Mists.
What? The one we just did?
No, I mean, my answer would have been Necrotic Wake, but they absolutely fucked that dungeon up.
Yeah.
Like, before they made the changes that they did for the season 1 Necrotic Wake, it would have been Necrotic Wake, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't actually know of the ones that are remaining. Like, the other side fucking sucks as a key.
I wish the other side should be great. It should be, but it's not.
Yeah, I agree. It is an amazing dungeon. It's an amazing story and it's an amazing vibe, but the mechanics in the dungeon are just fucking terrible.
Yeah. I like Halls of Atonement. I like both of the Halls of Atonement and Sanguine Depths. I like both of those.
I hate Sanguine Depths. Halls of Atonement would probably be my next one up because I'm not super jazzed about Plaguefall. Not super jazzed about the other side. And Spires of Ascension might be one of the worst dungeons they ever created. Right off with
that. Like, if they ever bring that dungeon back, they've like lost all sense of integrity because nobody likes that dungeon. Nobody does. Nobody has ever played Spires of Ascension and gone, "Oh yeah, well that was a good time. Enjoyed every bit of it."
Fuck Spires.
Yeah.
But Scott, we got to talk about our plans for this season.
Okay.
So we're both role swapping. First off. And so I guess that plays into this a little bit. You're swapping back to a role that you're more comfortable on.
Yeah, my tank era is over.
I'm swapping off the role I'm comfortable on and going to something I'm not comfortable on. So we're going to see what ends up happening there. But you've alluded to it already, but let the listeners know, what are you playing? What are you planning to do? Like, are you going to have alts and everything like that? And what are your goals?
Yeah, so I will be maining a Mistweaver monk this tier. I've only done that one other time, and it didn't start that way. I usually always begin when I'm healing specifically with my druid on Resto, and then I'll play some other healers. And in season 3 of Dragonflight, I started on druid, and then quickly switched to the Mistweaver because there were several keys in season 3 at the higher key levels where I just felt like I could respond to the spot healing needs just better as a monk than I could a druid. Thinking of you, Throne of Tides, with the stupid bubble. I forget what it's called, but just a huge heal absorb that you need to bomb heals on a person or they die. I just like it was so much easier as a Mistweaver. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm gonna be doing. I've always kind of hesitated in maining Mistweaver because I did not like how they healed in Raid. I think Mistweaver is so fun in keys. It's the most fun healer in keys for me. But I've never liked their Raid healing profile. It has shifted a little bit. They don't heal in Raid quite like they used to. So I'm hoping this time around that I will find some more fun in how they heal in Raid. We'll see. But it's definitely gonna be a learning experience for me because I'm very comfortable with their Mythic Plus healing kit. I'm much less comfortable with their Raid healing kit, but we'll see.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing for my main. As far as alts, I mean, yes. So I'm being very aggressive this time around, and there is a new carrot to chase, and that new carrot is 3k IO, where you get the mount, and I want to get every single one of my healers to that spot. So my goal for the dungeon, and this is not going to be something. My goal for the season. This is not going to be something I'm going to do. I have 6 months, right? So I'm going to take my sweet time with this, but I want to get good on every single healer in the game. Not great, but good. And I think 3k IO in this season is going to be, to get there, I think you have to kind of understand the healing profile, understanding how the class works, and be able to execute it well in order to get there, especially in this season in particular. So I think that's a good challenge for me. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to start with Mistweaver, and then probably Druid and Disc Priest, because those are my two other favorites after that. And then I'm going to work my way down the list. I can already guarantee that Evoker will be my last one, because I've just never liked how Preservation heals. I've just never been able to get into it. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be too great this season. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. It will be the final one. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's 6 healers. That's 3k IO for each of them. That's a lot of gearing. Hopefully the 0.5 patch will be nice to me and help me catch up, but we'll see. That's me.
I do think it's funny that you're swapping. You're planning to potentially do the worst healer last, which is going to be when people are going to be way more picky about the healers that they're inviting to their keys. So,
I mean, I'm fine. I'm a healer. I always get invited.
I am looking forward to seeing you play Evoker, though, because you have been very much so against them for a while now. But
I just like, it's just like the range issues, and then just it's a very interesting healer in how it plays. Like, you have just this very, very great chance of like setting up huge bursts of healing, but like in Mythic Plus, it just seems like you just can't respond very well to like sudden, like it's very bad. It's very pug unfriendly, I feel. And unfortunately, because it'll be the last one I'm doing, it's probably the one I'm going to do with pugs most. But we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. This is this is an aggressive goal. I'm going to be honest with everyone and myself. Like, this would be more maintaining more classes than I ever have in the game before.
The other question we need to answer, though, is how are you handling Priest? Are you just doing Disc?
I mean, if I was an insane person, I would say not only do I have to do both, but I have to do both on separate characters, so I have to re-gear them. I'm probably not going to do that. What I'll say is I'm gonna do Disc. I like Disc Priest a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. If I complete my challenge and there's still time left in the season and I've gotten all 6 healers to 3k, then I'll go, well, maybe I want to do Holy as well. I would like to get good at Holy Priest. I've only ever played Holy Priest one time, and that was in Dragonflight season 3, I think it was, when they were just incredible.
Shadowlands?
Shadowlands season 3, yeah. When they were just awesome.
Press boon, win game.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. That's the only time I've ever played them, and I didn't love it. I didn't love how that play style. That was basically where you had to maintain that flash heal buff in order to supercharge your heal. I did not enjoy that gameplay.
You had to hop off your mount and cast a flash heal on yourself and mount back up while you were running between packs.
It's great. Loved it. Yeah, so,
right.
so that's me. What about you?
Well, so my goals are first off, I don't know what the fuck I'm playing yet. I thought I knew. I thought I was just going to go into the season playing Bear and then call it good. But I jumped back on my Paladin while we were doing keys this past week and swapped it over to Prot and was playing Prot a little bit. And dude, like, you've said it multiple times, but like, tanks dealing damage feels good, and my paladin was doubling my bear's damage and also had like buttons for everything. And like I've tanked on paladin before, like I knew that that was part of it, but it's like an insane amount more damage. So I don't know, I might be starting out on paladin, I might still be sticking with bear. We'll find out there, but I don't have quite as lofty as a goal as Scott does. I would like to try and learn every tank or play around with them if I'm enjoying the role. And that means that I might be tagging along on his journey to 3K on every tank, but we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening, because there is a part of me that wonders, am I going to make it through the entire season still being a tank? And if not, then I'll be on a DPS of some sort at some point, and I will probably try to get 3K on that. So see how it
So
goes.
we need, and I'm going to crowdsource this. We need a term for this challenge that I'm setting upon myself, and that you have just agreed in a binding legal contract to do with me. Because like when the last real achievement outside the title was Keystone Hero, then the title Zero to Hero became very, very popular, right? Because it's perfect. It's a perfect phrase. It's great. But now it's Keystone Legend, and there's not like an easy term for this. So we have to come up with one. That's our job as content creators. So listeners, help me out here. Is it like Legend? Wait for it. Healy.
I don't know, Scott. You just said we as content creators need to come up with this, but also viewers, tell me what we need to call this
Well,
instead.
look. Several minds think better than one mind, and I've already been thinking of what to call this for several days and have come up with nothing at all. So I think we can turn to the people for help. I think this is a democracy still.
How are we doing this though? If we are both going for the same goal, does that mean when we are not finished until we each finish a character and then we have to restart together?
I mean, I don't think we have to put so tight a guardrails on it. I think you are able to play the game more often than I am, so I don't want to hold you back.
That's all right. I'll just go level some character I don't give a shit about. Play him for like 3 days and then stop playing him like I normally do.
That's true.
We all know what's going to happen. So,
no, I think this is gonna be fun. Like, this is the thing. I want to do this, but I also want to have fun with it. I think I've downloaded. What was the name of that software we downloaded yesterday?
oh, the one that records your keys?
Yeah,
I don't remember the name of it.
I literally just had it open. Oh, it's called Warcraft Recorder. There you go.
Very fancy.
So obviously there's many different solutions to record your gameplay. This is a cool one that someone posted on the competitive WoW subreddit I saw, that was one that automatically does it. Because like the main problem I have with recording is remembering to do it. And the cool thing about this is it analyzes your logs and knows, oh, Scott's in a key, start recording. And it will just automatically shut on and off your recording and save it down. So I'm going to be doing that. And we'll see if we want to mine some content out of this. Like, editing is a lot of work, but I also just want to do it just for my own. Like, everyone says you should review your VODs to get better at the game. And if I'm going to be getting to 3K with every single healer, I'm probably going to need to do that. So we're going to try it. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I want to have fun with it. I want to share the journey with everyone and enjoy it, because it's a fun game to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a fun fucking season, so that's
so.
just doubly so. All right, Scott, I don't have anything else for season 2. It's going to be something interesting that we're going to see how it plays out. I'm extremely excited for the raid. I'm extremely excited for Keys, as I always am. That's going to not change until they fundamentally ruin my favorite content in the game. So yeah, I'm very optimistic going into this season. I was last week. The only thing that I need to figure out is what the fuck I'm playing. So
Yeah,
please
don't
help.
worry. It's not like you have to decide that immediately or anything.
Yeah, like, tonight or
Yeah.
anything.
Hmm.
I need to go get my ring on my paladin too. That's the other thing I haven't done. So,
It's
but
Biss. It's Biss.
all right, guys. The Now that it's Wednesday for you guys, it's Wednesday morning for you. Hopefully, patch went well. Maintenance went well for you yesterday. I want to know what you guys did on patch day, or what you are planning to do this week. So, as always, you can contact us at yellingintothevoidwow@gmail.com. YouTube is at yellingintothevoidwow, and Twitter and Blue Sky are both at Into the Void Wow.
And if you are not subscribed to this podcast, we really, folks, did you not just hear about Legend? Wait for it, Healy, my new 0 to 3K series. You got, you got to check that out. We're workshopping the name. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and pretty much anywhere else in the world. You can find podcasts, and yeah, we'll definitely be over on YouTube as well. Maybe we'll even stream a little bit. I don't know. That all depends if you give me a name for my series.
Legend, I forgot to record my gameplay daily.
No, because I have WoW Recorder. It does it for me.
But guys, as always, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting on the YouTube video. All of those help us get more exposure, get introduced to new people, and let us continue doing what we do here. But we'll leave you guys with this. Have fun liberating Undermine. But until next week, we'll just be over here yelling into the void.